In the quiet coastal town of Havenport, where the sea mist rolled in thick every evening, there stood an old lighthouse on the edge of a jagged cliff. The Beacon of Havenport, as it was called, had guided ships safely to shore for over a century. But the lighthouse keeper, a man named Samuel, had not been seen in years. The light still shone, steady and bright, but the town knew there was no one to tend it. Samuel had been a fixture of Havenport for as long as anyone could remember. He was a tall, solitary man with a face weathered by the salt and wind, always seen in his oilskin coat and cap. He had taken over the lighthouse duties from his father, who had taken them from his father before him. The beacon had always been a family legacy, passed down through the generations, and Samuel had been proud to continue the tradition. But one fateful night during a fierce storm, a ship was dashed against the rocks despite the lighthouse's bright beam. The entire crew was lost, and among them was Samuel's only son, Peter, who had just returned from his first voyage at sea. The tragedy broke Samuel's spirit. He locked himself inside the lighthouse and was never seen in town again. Years passed, and the light continued to shine, but those who ventured near the lighthouse reported strange happenings. The air around the beacon grew unnaturally cold, even on warm summer nights, and the sound of distant mournful wails could be heard over the crashing waves. The most unsettling reports came from sailors who swore they saw a figure standing in the lighthouse window, gazing out to sea, even though everyone knew Samuel had long since passed away. One evening, a young couple named Emily and Jack, new to Havenport and eager to explore, decided to visit the lighthouse. The locals warned them to stay away, sharing stories of strange occurrences and restless spirits, but the couple, curious and skeptical, dismissed the warnings as superstitions. As they approached the lighthouse, the wind picked up, and the sky darkened with ominous clouds. The air felt heavy, and the sound of the crashing waves seemed louder, more menacing. They reached the door, which creaked open on its own, as if inviting them inside. They climbed the narrow, spiraling staircase to the top, their footsteps echoing eerily in the silence. At the summit, they found the lamp room, where the great light continued to turn, casting its beam out to the stormy sea. But there was something else in the room, something that made their blood run cold. Standing by the window was the figure of an old man, dressed in an oilskin coat and cap, staring out at the turbulent ocean. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow and filled with an unfathomable sadness. It was Samuel, or what remained of him. He slowly turned to face them, and in that moment, Emily and Jack felt a deep, crushing sorrow that seemed to emanate from the spirit before them. Samuel's ghost opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out, only a low, haunting moan that echoed through the room. The couple backed away, terror gripping their hearts, but before they could flee, Samuel pointed a trembling finger out the window and towards the sea. Following his gesture, they saw the ghostly image of a shipwreck, broken and battered on the rocks, with spectral figures struggling in the waves. Suddenly the vision disappeared, and they found themselves alone in the room, the lighthouse silent once more. Without a word, they turned and fled, running down the stairs and out into the night. As they reached the bottom of the cliff, they looked back one last time at the lighthouse. The light was out. The next morning, the townspeople found Emily and Jack in a state of shock, unable to explain what they had seen. But the story of their encounter spread through Havenport, and from that day on, no one dared approach the lighthouse. The Beacon of Havenport stood dark and silent for years after, slowly succumbing to the elements until it was nothing more than a crumbling ruin. But on stormy nights, when the waves crash violently against the cliffs, some say you can still see the light flickering in the distance, and the ghostly figure of Samuel, forever watching over the sea, waiting for his son to return.